Lieutenant Commander Sarah Ghost Martinez pressed herself against the cold metal bulkhead of the alien vessel, her breathing controlled and silent. 3 months ago, she had been leading reconnaissance missions in the Pacific. Now she was somewhere in the Kepler system, aboard a ship that defied every law of physics. She'd learned, at the Naval Academy, the mission briefing had been classified beyond anything she'd encountered in her 12 years as a Navy SEAL. First contact with an alien civilization, diplomatic negotiations, a joint human-alien research station. It all sounded promising until the Zephyrians revealed their true intentions. Sarah adjusted her modified tactical gear, feeling the weight of her plasma rifle against her shoulder. The weapon was a hybrid of human engineering and salvaged alien technology, created in the underground labs beneath SEAL Team 6 headquarters. The irony wasn't lost on her that humanity's most elite warriors were now humanity's first line of defense against an interstellar threat. The corridor stretched ahead, bathed in the eerie blue glow of alien lighting systems. Her enhanced helmet display showed heat signatures through the walls, dozens of Zephyrian soldiers moving in coordinated patterns. They were hunting her team, and they were good at it. But they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated what a human could do when cornered. Her comm system crackled softly. "Ghost, this is Phoenix. We've lost contact with Viper and Thunder. You're the only operator still active in your sector?" Sarah's jaw tightened. Viper was her spotter, a 20-year veteran who could put a round through a keyhole at 1,000 meters. Thunder was their demolitions expert, a young petty officer who could make a bomb out of spare parts and determination. If the Zephyrians had taken them down, this mission had gone from difficult to nearly impossible. Copy, Phoenix. Proceeding to primary objective. Ghost out. The primary objective was Dr. Elena Vasquez, a xenobiologist who had been studying Zephyrian technology when their hosts decided that humans were better suited as test subjects than partners. According to intelligence reports, she was being held in the ship's bio-research deck, 3 levels above Sarah's current position. Sarah moved through the ship like a shadow, her training adapting to the alien environment with practiced efficiency. The Zephyrians had built their vessels with different proportions than human ships. The ceilings were higher, the corridors wider, and the gravity was approximately 30% heavier than Earth standard. It should have been a disadvantage, but SEALs trained in every conceivable environment. Heavy gravity just meant she hit harder when she struck. She paused at an intersection, listening to the subsonic communications of the alien soldiers. The Zephyrians communicated through a combination of vocal tones and electromagnetic pulses that human ears couldn't normally detect. Fortunately, her helmet's audio enhancement system could translate the basic patterns. They were coordinating a sweep pattern, moving in groups of 4, checking every compartment systematically. Sarah smiled grimly. Systematic was predictable. Predictable was exploitable. She activated her suit's adaptive camouflage system, another piece of hybrid technology that bent light around her form. It wasn't perfect. A careful observer could still spot the distortion. But in the blue-tinged lighting of the alien ship, it was effective enough. The first Zephyrian patrol rounded the corner exactly when her mental countdown predicted. 4 soldiers, each standing nearly 7 feet tall, with elongated limbs and skin that shifted color based on their emotional state. Their current deep purple indicated high alertness and aggression. Their weapons were energy-based, similar to plasma rifles but with a distinct crystalline component that seemed to focus the energy into incredibly precise beams. Sarah waited until they passed her position, then moved. Her combat knife found the gap between the trailing soldier's armor plates before he could react. The Zephyrian dropped silently, his weapon clattering against the deck plating. The sound was enough to alert his companions. Contact! The lead Zephyrian's electromagnetic pulse carried overtones of surprise and alarm. Sarah was already moving, using the fallen soldier's body as cover, while she brought her plasma rifle to bear. The weapon discharged with a sound like controlled thunder, the energy bolt taking the second Zephyrian center mass. His armor absorbed most of the impact, but the kinetic force sent him sprawling. The remaining 2 soldiers spread out, their training evident in their smooth coordination. They fired in alternating patterns, their energy beams scarring the bulkhead where Sarah had been moments before. But she was no longer there. One advantage of growing up human was learning to fight in 3 dimensions. While the Zephyrians were skilled ground fighters, They hadn't evolved from arboreal ancestors. Sarah used the ship's higher ceilings to her advantage, scaling a support strut and attacking from above. Her second plasma bolt caught the third soldier in the back of the neck, where his armor was thinnest. He went down hard, his weapon spinning across the deck. The fourth soldier spun to track her movement, his rifle tracking upward. Sarah dropped from the ceiling strut, landing on the alien warrior with her full weight behind her combat boots. The impact drove him to the deck, his weapon flying from suddenly nerveless fingers. Before he could recover, Sarah's knife found the weak point in his armor, 4 down in less than 30 seconds. Sarah checked each body for intelligence, taking their communication devices and weapon power cells. The Zephyrian technology was sophisticated, but it relied heavily on centralized control systems. Individual soldiers carried authorization codes that could be useful later. She activated her helmet's recording system and transmitted a status update to Phoenix. Ghost to base. 4 hostiles neutralized. Proceeding to objective. Enemy coordination is excellent, but they're not prepared for close quarters combat with human tactics. Copy, Ghost. Be advised. We're detecting increased activity on the research deck. They know you're coming. Sarah checked her ammunition and equipment. 3 power cells for her plasma rifle, enough for perhaps 24 shots. Her sidearm was a modified .45 caliber pistol, loaded with armor-piercing rounds designed specifically for Zephyrian anatomy. She had 4 grenades, her knife, and approximately 6 hours of life support remaining. Against an entire ship full of hostile aliens, it seemed like inadequate equipment. But Sarah had been in worse situations. During her 3rd deployment, she had held a mountain pass against 200 insurgents with nothing but a sniper rifle and her spotter. She had completed that mission too. The research deck was 2 levels up. Dr. Vasquez was counting on her. More importantly, humanity was counting on the intelligence that the xenobiologist had gathered. If the Zephyrians were planning something larger than a simple betrayal, Earth needed to know about it. Sarah moved deeper into the alien ship, her footsteps silent against the deck plating. Behind her, 4 enemy soldiers lay motionless in the blue-tinged corridor. Ahead of her, an unknown number of hostiles waited between her and her objective. She had been in worse situations. She was going to complete this mission too. Sarah reached the access shaft that led to the research deck after eliminating 2 more Zephyrian patrols. The aliens were learning from their losses, adapting their tactics with each encounter. The last group had tried to use energy shields and coordinated fire patterns. It hadn't been enough, but it proved they were capable of evolution under pressure. The shaft was designed for Zephyrian proportions, which meant it was uncomfortably large for Sarah, but manageable. She climbed carefully, her enhanced hearing picking up the electromagnetic chatter from above. The research deck was heavily defended. At least 12 soldiers, plus automated defense systems. Her helmet display showed the deck layout based on intelligence gathered during the initial diplomatic mission. Dr. Vasquez was being held in Laboratory 7, near the center of the deck. Between Sarah and the lab were multiple security checkpoints, a maze of research stations, and what appeared to be some kind of energy barrier system. Sarah paused at the access hatch, listening to the enemy communications. The Zephyrians were discussing something called Protocol 7. The translation software couldn't provide complete context, but the emotional undertones suggested urgency and excitement. Whatever Protocol 7 entailed, they were eager to implement it. She activated her suit's sensor package, scanning through the hatch for immediate threats. 2 guards were positioned directly outside the access point, their weapons trained on the opening. Standard security procedure, but it created an opportunity for someone with the right training. Sarah primed 2 of her remaining grenades, setting them for a 3-second delay with minimal fragmentation. The goal wasn't to kill the guards, but to disorient them long enough for her to gain a tactical advantage. The grenades tumbled through the hatch opening, bouncing off the deck plating with metallic clangs. Sarah heard the guards' electromagnetic alarm calls, followed by the sharp crack of explosive decompression as the grenades vented their charges into the ship's atmosphere. She emerged from the access shaft in the midst of the confusion, her plasma rifle finding targets through the dissipating smoke and debris. The first guard was stumbling backward, his equilibrium disrupted by the concussive force. Sarah's energy bolt caught him center mass, the impact sending him crashing into a bank of alien computer systems. The second guard had recovered faster, his weapon already tracking toward Sarah's position. She rolled left, using a research station as cover while his energy beam scorched the air where she had been standing. The alien's weapon had a brief recharge delay between shots. Sarah used that window to close the distance. Her combat knife found the gap in his armor at the joint where his arm met his torso. The Zephyrian dropped his weapon, his skin shifting from purple to a pale yellow that indicated pain and shock. Sarah's follow-up strike ended the threat permanently. She took stock of her surroundings. The research deck was a maze of scientific equipment that seemed to blend organic and technological elements. Crystalline structures pulsed with internal light, connected to banks of computing systems by what appeared to be living cables. The air carried a strange ozone smell mixed with something that reminded her of seaweed. Her helmet's translation system picked up increased chatter from deeper in the deck. The remaining guards were converging on her position, but they were also discussing Protocol 7 with growing urgency. Something about her presence had accelerated their timeline. Sarah moved through the laboratory maze, using the alien equipment as cover while she advanced toward Laboratory 7. The Zephyrian technology was fascinating, but she couldn't afford to be distracted by scientific curiosity. Dr. Vasquez was counting on her. She encountered the next defense line at Research Station 4. 3 Zephyrians had positioned themselves behind an energy barrier that shimmered like a soap bubble but deflected her plasma bolts with casual efficiency. Their return fire forced her to take cover behind what appeared to be some kind of biological analysis system. The energy barrier was a problem. Her remaining grenades wouldn't penetrate it, and her plasma rifle was useless against the defensive field. But Sarah had learned long ago that every technology had weaknesses. She just needed to find this one's vulnerability. She studied the barrier system while dodging energy beams. The field was generated by 3 crystalline projectors positioned at the corners of an equilateral triangle. The projectors were connected to a central power distribution node by those organic-looking cables. If she could disrupt the power flow, Sarah drew her sidearm and carefully aimed at the nearest cable connection. The .45 caliber armor-piercing round severed the organic conduit, causing sparks and what looked like blue fluid to spray from the damaged connection. The energy barrier flickered but held. The Zephyrians behind the barrier realized what she was attempting. They shifted their fire pattern, trying to prevent her from targeting the remaining connections. But they had made a tactical error by positioning themselves in a static defense. Static defenses could be flanked. Sarah used her suit's camouflage system to break visual contact, then circled around the research station complex. The Zephyrians' electromagnetic communication was focused forward, toward her last known position. They weren't monitoring their flanks effectively. She approached the second projector from an oblique angle, using the laboratory equipment to mask her movement. Her knife made quick work of the organic cable, and this time the energy barrier collapsed entirely. The 3 Zephyrians spun to face the new threat, but Sarah was already among them. At close range, their energy weapons became a liability rather than an asset. She used their size against them, staying low and inside their reach while her knife found the gaps in their armor. The engagement lasted less than 10 seconds. When it was over, 3 more Zephyrian soldiers lay motionless on the laboratory deck. Sarah checked her equipment. 1 grenade remaining, half a power cell for her plasma rifle, and her sidearm down to 6 rounds. She was running low on ammunition, but she was close to her objective. Laboratory 7 was visible through a transparent wall that seemed to be made of the same energy barrier technology she had just defeated. Inside, Dr. Vasquez was strapped to what appeared to be an examination table, surrounded by alien medical equipment. She was conscious and appeared uninjured, but her eyes showed the strain of prolonged stress. Between Sarah and the laboratory were 6 more Zephyrian soldiers and what looked like an automated defense turret. The soldiers were positioned in 2 teams of 3, with overlapping fields of fire. The turret was mounted on the ceiling, its crystalline barrel tracking back and forth in a search pattern. Sarah activated her comm system. "Ghost to Phoenix. I have visual on the package. Heavy resistance between my position and objective. Request any available support." "Negative, Ghost, you're on your own, but we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the ship. Whatever they're planning, it's happening soon." Protocol 7. Sarah needed to reach Dr. Vasquez and extract her before the Zephyrians implemented whatever they had planned. She studied the enemy positions, looking for weaknesses in their defensive setup. The automated turret was the biggest threat, but it was also the key to solving her tactical problem. If she could turn the alien technology against its creators, Sarah drew her last grenade and studied the turret's tracking pattern. The device swept back and forth in a predictable arc, pausing briefly at each end of its travel. During those pauses, she would have approximately 2 seconds to act. She waited for the turret to complete its sweep, then sprinted forward. The device began to track back toward her position, its energy weapon charging with a high-pitched whine. Sarah dove behind a research console just as the turret fired, the energy beam scorching the deck where she had been running. But she wasn't there anymore. She had used the research console as a stepping stone, launching herself upward toward the ceiling-mounted turret. Her grenade was already armed, its timer counting down the final 3 seconds. The grenade lodged itself in the turret's crystalline focusing array just as the timer reached 0. The explosion destroyed the turret's targeting system and sent debris raining down on the Zephyrian soldiers below. In the confusion that followed, Sarah dropped among the enemy positions like an avenging angel. Her plasma rifle found 2 targets before its power cell was exhausted. Her sidearm accounted for 2 more before she ran out of ammunition. The final 2 Zephyrians rushed her with energy weapons set to close combat mode. But they had made the same mistake as their comrades throughout the ship. They had challenged a Navy SEAL operative to close-quarters combat. Sarah's knife ended the last threat just as alarms began sounding throughout the research deck. Protocol 7 was beginning and she was out of time. Sarah approached the energy barrier surrounding Laboratory 7 with growing urgency. The alarms throughout the ship had shifted to a new pattern, one that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of a massive heartbeat. Through her helmet's electromagnetic sensors, she could detect massive power buildups in the ship's lower sections. Dr. Elena Vasquez saw her coming and began struggling against her restraints with renewed vigor. The xenobiologist was a small woman in her 40s, with graying hair and intense dark eyes that held both relief and terror. She had been conscious throughout her captivity, which meant she knew what the Zephyrians were planning. The energy barrier around the laboratory was more sophisticated than the one Sarah had destroyed earlier. Multiple projectors created overlapping fields, and the power distribution system was redundant and hardened. She would need a different approach. Sarah examined the laboratory's transparent walls more carefully. The material wasn't actually transparent at all, but rather a sophisticated projection system that allowed observation while maintaining a physical barrier. If she could disrupt the projection matrix, she found the control panel adjacent to the laboratory entrance, its crystalline interface displaying alien symbols that shifted and changed as she watched. Her helmet's translation software could parse some of the meanings, but the technical terminology was beyond its programming. Dr. Vasquez was gesturing frantically from inside the laboratory, pointing toward specific symbols on her side of the barrier. The xenobiologist had been studying Zephyrian technology for months before the betrayal. She might understand how to operate their systems. Sarah activated her helmet's external speakers. "Doctor, can you hear me?" "Yes." "Thank God, I thought everyone was dead. You need to get me out of here immediately. They're implementing something called Protocol 7 and it's not what we thought. I'm working on it. Can you help me with this control system?" Dr. Vasquez twisted in her restraints to get a better view of the panel. The blue symbol at the top right, press it twice, then the purple sequence below it. But be careful. Some of these controls are booby-trapped. Sarah followed the instructions, her gloved fingers carefully manipulating the alien interface. The symbols responded to her touch, changing color and configuration. She pressed the blue symbol twice, then moved to the purple sequence. The energy barrier flickered and began to fade. But a new alarm sounded from the control panel. Red symbols flashed across the display, and Sarah could hear electromagnetic communications from other parts of the ship responding to the alert. "That's the security override," Dr. Vasquez called out. "You have maybe 2 minutes before they lock down the entire deck." Sarah drew her combat knife and approached the laboratory entrance. The energy barrier was weakening, but it was still present. She tested the field's integrity with the tip of her blade, watching as the metal heated to glowing red before she pulled it back. "Doctor, what exactly is Protocol 7? "They're not trying to study us," Dr. Vasquez replied, her voice tight with fear. "They're trying to replicate us. Human neural patterns, human genetic markers, human psychological profiles. They want to create artificial humans that they can control." Sarah's blood went cold. The implications were staggering. If the Zephyrians could create convincing human duplicates, they could infiltrate Earth's government's military commands and scientific institutions. Humanity would be fighting an enemy that looked exactly like them. How close are they to success? Too close. They've been using my research to understand human brain chemistry. They have samples from the other captured personnel. If they complete Protocol 7, they'll be able to replace key human leaders without anyone knowing the difference. The energy barrier suddenly collapsed completely. The laboratory entrance now clear. Sarah rushed inside and began working on Dr. Vasquez's restraints. The alien binding system was complex but not impossible to understand. Each restraint had multiple locking mechanisms that required specific sequences to release. "There's something else," Dr. Vasquez said as Sarah freed her arms. "They're not just planning to infiltrate Earth. They're planning to eliminate the original human population once their replacements are in position. The genetic samples they've collected will allow them to create a biological weapon that targets specifically human DNA." Sarah's knife made quick work of the leg restraints. "How long do we have?" "The genetic weapon is already complete. They're just waiting for their infiltrators to be in position. But if we can destroy their research data and genetic samples, we can set them back years." Sarah helped Dr. Vasquez to her feet, noting that the xenobiologist was steadier than expected despite her ordeal. "Where are the samples stored?" "Biological containment 3 levels down. But it's heavily guarded and the access routes are restricted to senior Zephyrian personnel." The alarm pattern changed again, becoming more urgent. Through the laboratory's observation windows, Sarah could see Zephyrian soldiers moving through the corridor outside. "They had discovered the security breach and were responding in force. We need to move." "Can you keep up?" Dr. Vasquez nodded, picking up a piece of alien equipment that looked like a crystalline scanner. "This is a biological analyzer. If we can reach their genetic storage facility, I can use it to identify and destroy the human samples." Sarah checked her remaining equipment. No ammunition for either weapon, no grenades, just her knife and whatever alien weapons she could scavenge. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. They moved toward the laboratory exit, but Sarah held up a hand as electromagnetic communications indicated a large group of soldiers approaching from the main corridor. The Zephyrians had learned from her previous encounters and were coming in overwhelming numbers. "Alternative exit?" Sarah asked. Dr. Vasquez pointed toward a maintenance access panel near the back of the laboratory. "Service corridors. They're smaller than the main passages, but they connect to every level of the ship." Sarah used her knife to force open the maintenance panel, revealing a narrow corridor that was clearly designed for Zephyrian maintenance personnel. The space was cramped even for human proportions, but it would provide concealment while they moved through the ship. They crawled through the service corridor as the sounds of Zephyrian soldiers searching the laboratory echoed behind them. The maintenance tunnel was equipped with its own lighting system, but the illumination was dimmer than the main ship areas. "Doctor, what's your assessment of Zephyrian combat capabilities?" "They're excellent strategic planners and coordinators, but they're not as adaptable as humans in crisis situations. Their evolution favored group cooperation over individual improvisation. That's why you've been able to defeat them in close combat." Sarah filed that information away. It confirmed her tactical observations and suggested that their best chance lay in maintaining the initiative and forcing the Zephyrians to react rather than plan. The service corridor intersected with a vertical shaft that led down toward the lower levels. Sarah could see maintenance platforms at regular intervals, providing a route to the biological containment facility. 3 levels down, she confirmed. They began their descent, moving carefully from platform to platform. The shaft was designed with Zephyrian physiology in mind, so the distances between platforms were challenging for human anatomy. But Sarah's SEAL training had included extensive vertical assault techniques. As they descended, the electromagnetic chatter from the ship's communication systems grew more intense. The Zephyrians were coordinating a ship-wide search, and they were getting close to locating the service access points. "Doctor, how much time do we have before they can implement their infiltration plan?" "The genetic weapon is ready now. The artificial humans take approximately 6 hours to reach full consciousness after activation. They could begin the infiltration within a day if we don't stop them." Sarah reached the platform for the biological containment level and helped Dr. Vasquez down from the shaft. Through the maintenance access panel, they could hear the sounds of intensive scientific activity. The Zephyrians were working frantically to complete their project. "One more question, Doctor. What would happen if their genetic storage facility suffered a catastrophic contamination breach? Dr. Vasquez smiled grimly. It would destroy every biological sample in the facility and render the entire level uninhabitable for months. But the contamination protocols would also trigger automatic lockdown procedures. We'd be trapped inside. Sarah considered their options. They could try to destroy the genetic samples and escape, but the Zephyrians would likely have backup samples elsewhere on the ship. Or they could trigger a complete contamination breach that would ensure the destruction of all biological materials. But at the cost of their own lives, Doctor. How important is it that this research be completely destroyed? If the Zephyrians complete their infiltration plan, humanity as we know it will cease to exist. Every human on Earth will eventually be replaced by alien duplicates programmed to serve Zephyrian interests. Sarah nodded. The choice was clear. Mission success trumped personal survival. It always had for Navy SEALs. She began working on the maintenance access panel. Then we trigger the contamination breach. The biological containment level was a cathedral of alien science, with towering crystalline storage units that pulsed with internal light. Each storage unit contained thousands of genetic samples suspended in some kind of energy matrix that preserved them at the molecular level. The scale of the operation was staggering. Sarah and Dr. Vasquez emerged from the maintenance access into a secondary laboratory that appeared to be used for sample preparation. The room was empty, but electromagnetic communications indicated that the main containment facility was heavily staffed with both scientists and security personnel. There, Dr. Vasquez pointed toward a central control station surrounded by the largest storage units. That's the primary genetic archive. It contains samples from every species they've encountered, including the complete human genome database they've compiled from our people. Sarah studied the layout of the facility. The central archive was positioned in the middle of a circular chamber, surrounded by concentric rings of smaller storage units. Catwalks and platforms provided access to different levels of the storage matrix. It was an efficient design, but it also created clear fields of fire for defensive positions. What do you need to access the contamination protocols? Dr. Vasquez activated her crystalline scanner, sweeping it across the alien control systems. The contamination system is designed to respond to biological threats, not intentional sabotage. But if I can introduce conflicting genetic data into the storage matrix, it should trigger automatic containment breach procedures. How long will that take? At least 10 minutes to access the system and upload the corrupted data. Maybe longer if they've implemented additional security measures since my capture. Sarah counted the enemy personnel visible through the laboratory's observation window. 12 Zephyrian scientists and at least 8 security guards, possibly more on the upper levels. They were all focused on their work, preparing genetic samples for the artificial human project. 10 minutes is too long. They'll detect us before you can complete the upload. Dr. Vasquez looked around the preparation laboratory, her scientific mind cataloging the available equipment. There might be another way. These preparation stations are connected directly to the main storage matrix. If I can create a biological contaminant here and introduce it into the system, it might trigger the breach protocols faster. What kind of contaminant? Something that the Zephyrian systems would interpret as a deadly pathogen. The storage matrix is designed to prevent contamination, but if I can convince it that there's already a breach in progress. Sarah nodded. Do it. I'll buy you the time you need. Dr. Vasquez began working with the alien equipment, her fingers dancing across crystalline interfaces as she accessed the preparation systems. The scanner in her hands provided real-time analysis of the biological processes, allowing her to manipulate the alien technology with surprising efficiency. Sarah moved toward the facility entrance, studying the positions of the enemy personnel. The Zephyrians were organized into work groups, each focused on specific aspects of the genetic manipulation project. They weren't expecting an attack from inside their most secure facility. She scavenged weapons from the preparation laboratory, finding several energy-based tools that could be repurposed as weapons. The devices weren't designed for combat, but they could discharge significant amounts of energy in focused beams. Against unarmored targets, they would be effective. Sarah, Dr. Vasquez called softly, I'm uploading corrupted genetic data into the preparation matrix now. The system is interpreting it as a potential contamination event, but it hasn't triggered the breach protocols yet. What's missing? The system needs to detect active pathogen spread before it will initiate facility-wide contamination procedures. I need to create multiple contamination events simultaneously. Sarah understood. Dr. Vasquez needed access to multiple preparation stations throughout the facility, which meant Sarah would need to clear the enemy personnel from several positions at once. Give me 30 seconds, then start moving to the next station. Sarah activated one of the repurposed energy tools and stepped into the main containment facility. The Zephyrian scientists looked up from their work with expressions of surprise and confusion. They hadn't expected a human to appear in their most secure location. The first energy blast caught a security guard before he could reach for his weapon. The tool discharged with a brilliant flash that overloaded the alien's optical sensors, leaving him stumbling blindly into a bank of storage units. The other guards reacted quickly, drawing their energy weapons and spreading out to establish fields of fire, but they were positioned to defend against external threats, not against an enemy who had already penetrated their perimeter. Sarah used the storage units as cover, moving between the crystalline towers while picking targets of opportunity. The repurposed laboratory tool was slow to recharge between shots, but it was accurate and powerful. Each blast disabled or killed a Zephyrian soldier. The scientists were fleeing toward emergency exits, but several security personnel were still active and coordinating their response. Sarah needed to keep them distracted while Dr. Vasquez accessed the preparation stations. She reached into her tactical vest and pulled out the only piece of standard Earth technology she still carried: a smoke grenade from her original equipment. The device had been modified with a chemical compound designed to interfere with Zephyrian optical systems. The grenade detonated in the center of the facility, filling the air with dense smoke that reflected and scattered the alien lighting systems. The Zephyrians began firing blindly, their energy beams creating a light show that further confused their targeting systems. Sarah moved through the smoke like a ghost, her helmet's enhanced sensors allowing her to navigate while the enemy was effectively blind. She eliminated 3 more guards with her improvised weapon before the tool's power cell was exhausted. Second station complete, Dr. Vasquez reported through the comm system. The contamination cascade is beginning, but I need to reach at least 2 more stations. Sarah drew her combat knife and continued her assault. The Zephyrians were skilled fighters, but they were struggling to adapt to the chaos she had created. Their coordination broke down as individual soldiers lost contact with their teams. She reached a Zephyrian security officer who was trying to coordinate a response from an elevated platform. The alien was larger and stronger than Sarah, but he was focused on his communication systems rather than immediate threats. Her knife found the gap in his armor before he realized she was there. The officer's energy weapon was more sophisticated than the laboratory tools she had been using. Sarah appropriated the device and checked its power level, nearly fully charged with settings for both lethal and non-lethal force. Third station accessed, Dr. Vasquez reported. The system is detecting multiple contamination events. Breach protocol should initiate in approximately 3 minutes. Sarah provided covering fire while the xenobiologist moved to the final preparation station. The remaining Zephyrian security personnel had regrouped near the facility's main exit, creating a defensive position that controlled the primary escape route. But Sarah wasn't planning to escape through the main exit. Her mission was to ensure the complete destruction of the genetic research, even if it meant being trapped in the facility when the contamination protocols activated. She engaged the defensive position with the captured energy weapon, her shots precise and devastating. The Zephyrians returned fire, their energy beams scarring the storage units around her position. Several storage containers were damaged, releasing clouds of genetic material that the facility's sensors immediately identified as contamination events. The system is cascading faster than expected, Dr. Vasquez called out. All those damaged storage units are accelerating the breach protocols. We have maybe 2 minutes before facility lockdown. Sarah eliminated the last security guard and moved toward Dr. Vasquez's position. The xenobiologist was working frantically at the final preparation station, her crystalline scanner interfacing with the alien systems to upload the final batch of corrupted data. How much longer? 30 seconds. The contamination cascade is building exponentially. Once I complete this upload, the entire facility will be declared biologically compromised. Sarah established a defensive perimeter around the preparation station, watching for any remaining threats. The facility was eerily quiet except for the growing alarm sounds from the contamination detection systems. Upload complete, Dr. Vasquez announced. Facility-wide contamination breach protocols activating now. Emergency lighting flooded the containment facility as massive blast doors began sealing all exits. The storage matrix systems powered down in sequence, their crystalline structures going dark as the genetic samples were purged by emergency sterilization. Protocols. Sarah and Dr. Vasquez found themselves trapped in a secondary laboratory as the facility lockdown completed. The contamination breach had been successful, but they were now sealed inside with no apparent means of escape. Well, Dr. Vasquez said with grim satisfaction, humanity's genetic secrets are safe. The Zephyrians will have to start over from scratch, and that will take them years. Sarah checked her equipment and surveyed their prison. Doctor, you said the contamination protocols would render this level uninhabitable for months. Does that include the service corridors? Dr. Vasquez considered the question. The sterilization process is designed to eliminate biological contamination, not to damage the ship's structure. The service corridors should be accessible once the initial purge cycle completes. How long for the purge cycle? Approximately 1 hour. Sarah nodded. 1 hour trapped in an alien laboratory, while sterilization protocols eliminated every trace of biological material in the facility. It would be uncomfortable but survivable with their current life support systems. Then we wait, and hope that Phoenix can extract us before the Zephyrians figure out how to override their own safety protocols. The sterilization protocols created an otherworldly light show as energy fields swept through the biological containment facility. Sarah and Dr. Vasquez huddled in the secondary laboratory, watching through reinforced observation windows as the purge systems methodically destroyed every trace of organic material in the main chamber. How thorough are these sterilization protocols? Sarah asked, checking her life support readings. Dr. Vasquez studied the alien displays on the laboratory's control panels. Designed to eliminate biological threats down to the molecular level, the energy fields break apart genetic sequences and protein structures, then incinerate the remaining components. It's actually quite elegant from a scientific perspective, and quite deadly if you're caught in the open when it activates. The Zephyrians have excellent safety protocols. They just never expected someone to trigger them intentionally from inside the facility. Sarah's comm system crackled with a weak signal. Phoenix was trying to reach her, but the sterilization fields were interfering with communication systems throughout this section of the ship. Ghost. Phoenix. Respond if. Read me. Sarah adjusted her communication settings, trying to find a frequency that could penetrate the interference. Phoenix, this is Ghost. Package secured, but we're trapped in biological containment during sterilization protocols. Estimate 1 hour until extraction is possible. Copy, Ghost. Enemy forces, converging on your massive retaliation, inbound. The signal faded to static, but the message was clear enough. The Zephyrians were responding to the destruction of their genetic research facility with overwhelming force. Sarah and Dr. Vasquez would need to be ready to fight their way out once the sterilization cycle completed. Dr. Vasquez was examining the alien equipment in their temporary prison. Sarah, look at this. This laboratory isn't just for sample preparation. They've been conducting active genetic manipulation experiments. Sarah joined her at a workstation displaying complex biological data. Even without translation software, the patterns were recognizable as DNA sequences. But these sequences had been modified with additional components that didn't match any terrestrial genetic patterns. They've been creating hybrid organisms, Dr. Vasquez continued, her scientific excitement overriding their dangerous situation. Combining human genetic material with Zephyrian biological enhancements, this isn't just about creating artificial humans. They're trying to create superior humans under their control. Enhanced how? Increased physical strength, improved sensory capabilities, extended lifespans, enhanced cognitive processing. They're trying to create the perfect infiltration agents by combining the best aspects of both species. Sarah studied the data displays more carefully. If the Zephyrians had been successful in creating enhanced human duplicates, Earth's defensive capabilities would be severely compromised. Even a small number of such infiltrators could devastate human command structures. How close were they to success? Dr. Vasquez accessed additional data files, her expression growing more concerned with each new discovery. Very close. They have viable genetic templates and the technology to implement them. The only thing they were missing was sufficient quantities of fresh human genetic material to create a stable manufacturing process, which they were getting from captured personnel. Including from me, they've been taking samples from all the human prisoners, building a comprehensive genetic database. If they had completed the process, Sarah's tactical mind was already working on the implications. Doctor, you said they needed fresh genetic material. How fresh? The genetic integrity degrades rapidly once removed from living tissue. They need samples taken within hours of beginning the enhancement process. Sarah felt a cold certainty settling in her chest. They don't just have prisoners for genetic sampling. They have them for real-time genetic harvesting. Dr. Vasquez's face went pale as she understood the implications. The other members of your team, if they're still alive, the Zephyrians will be using them as living genetic sources for their enhancement program. Sarah checked her equipment again. The alien energy weapon she had captured was still functional, and her combat knife was ready, but she was running on fumes in terms of ammunition and supplies. Still, if Viper and Thunder were alive somewhere on this ship, she couldn't abandon them. Can you determine where they might be holding other prisoners? Dr. Vasquez accessed the laboratory's communication systems, searching for data about other research projects. There's a secondary biological facility on the upper levels. It's listed as active genetic research rather than storage and preparation. That's where they would conduct real-time genetic extraction. The sterilization fields were beginning to fade as the purge cycle neared completion. Sarah could see through the observation windows that the main containment facility had been scoured clean. Every storage unit was dark, every biological sample destroyed. Her comm system suddenly cleared as the interference ended. Ghost, this is Phoenix. We have confirmation of massive Zephyrian response forces converging on your location. Estimate at least 50 combatants moving through the ship. Copy, Phoenix. We need extraction from biological containment, then immediate movement to the upper research facility. We have additional personnel to recover. Negative, Ghost. Mission parameters have changed. Primary objective is complete. You are directed to proceed to extraction point immediately. Sarah looked at Dr. Vasquez, then at the data displays showing the locations of other human prisoners. The mission parameters might have changed, but her personal code hadn't. She didn't leave people behind. Phoenix, Ghost is proceeding to secondary objective. Will advise when ready for extraction. Ghost, you are ordered to abort secondary operations and proceed to extraction immediately. Sarah switched off her comm system. She had received her orders, but sometimes orders conflicted with doing the right thing. In those situations, she trusted her judgment over distant commanders who didn't understand the tactical situation. Doctor, can you get us out of this laboratory? Dr. Vasquez was already working on the access controls. The lockdown protocols are designed to prevent contamination from spreading, not to keep people inside once the sterilization is complete. I can override the security systems. The laboratory door unsealed with a soft hiss, revealing the service corridor they had used to reach the biological containment level. The passage was clear, but Sarah could hear electromagnetic communications, indicating heavy Zephyrian movement throughout the ship. Upper research facility, Sarah confirmed. They moved through the service corridors with practiced stealth, climbing back toward the upper levels where active genetic research was being conducted. The ship's layout was becoming familiar to Sarah, and she was learning to anticipate Zephyrian patrol patterns. But the enemy was also learning. The electromagnetic chatter indicated they had identified the service corridor system as a primary infiltration route. Security teams were being positioned at key access points. They're adapting faster than I expected, Sarah observed. The Zephyrians are excellent at pattern recognition and strategic coordination. They've probably analyzed every engagement you've had and developed countermeasures. Sarah considered this information. If the enemy was adapting to her tactics, She needed to change her approach. Instead of stealth and infiltration, maybe it was time for a direct assault. They reached the access point for the upper research level, but Sarah could detect at least 6 Zephyrian soldiers positioned in the corridor beyond. The enemies were using energy shields and coordinated defensive positions that would be difficult to overcome with limited ammunition. Doctor, those genetic enhancement procedures you discovered, could they be applied to existing humans rather than artificial ones? In theory, yes. The enhancement process is designed to modify living genetic material, but it would be extremely dangerous. The failure rate would be very high. Sarah studied the alien energy weapon she had captured, noting its various power settings and configuration options. What if someone were willing to accept those risks? Dr. Vasquez realized what Sarah was considering. You want to use their enhancement technology on yourself? Sarah, that could kill you. Or worse, it could leave you as something that's no longer fully human. Doctor, what are the chances of successfully completing this mission using conventional tactics? Doctor, Vasquez looked at the data indicating enemy positions and response patterns. Against 50 Zephyrian soldiers with energy weapons and defensive advantages? Very low. Then we need unconventional tactics. Sarah turned toward the secondary laboratory they had just left. Can you operate their genetic enhancement equipment? I can try. But Sarah, once the process begins, there's no reversing it. You could die on that table or emerge as something completely different. Sarah checked her combat knife one final time. Doctor, I've been something different my entire military career. I've been a weapon designed to protect people who can't protect themselves. If the Zephyrians want to enhance that weapon, maybe it's time to let them. Dr. Vasquez worked frantically to reconfigure the alien genetic enhancement equipment, while Sarah lay on the examination table where the xenobiologist had been held captive hours earlier. The irony wasn't lost on either of them that they were using Zephyrian technology to create something the aliens had never intended. The enhancement matrix is designed to integrate Zephyrian genetic advantages with human baseline physiology, Dr. Vasquez explained as she calibrated the crystalline interfaces. Enhanced strength, improved reflexes, increased sensory acuity, and accelerated healing. But the process was designed for artificial humans grown in controlled environments, not for modification of existing human subjects. Sarah felt the examination table adjusting to her body configuration as alien sensors mapped her biological systems. What are the failure scenarios? Genetic rejection would cause massive organ failure. Incomplete integration could result in permanent disfigurement or loss of cognitive function. Successful enhancement might fundamentally alter your personality and psychological makeup. And if it works, Dr. Vasquez paused in her preparations. If it works, you'll be stronger and faster than any human has ever been. But you'll also be something that's never existed before, a hybrid of human determination and alien enhancement. Sarah closed her eyes as the enhancement equipment activated around her. Energy fields began scanning her cellular structure while crystalline injectors positioned themselves at key points along her body. Doctor, promise me something. If this goes wrong, complete the mission anyway. Get to the upper research facility and save our people. Sarah, I'm not a soldier. I wouldn't know how to. You're a human being and that's enough. The Zephyrians underestimate what humans can accomplish when they're determined to protect others. Use that advantage. The enhancement process began with a sensation like electricity flowing through her veins. Sarah gritted her teeth as alien genetic sequences merged with her human DNA, each cell in her body being systematically rewritten according to the hybrid template Dr. Vasquez had programmed. Pain unlike anything she had experienced during SEAL training flooded her nervous system as her muscles and bones restructured themselves. Her sensory organs adapted to new capabilities while her cardiovascular system was enhanced to support increased physical demands. Through the agony, Sarah remained conscious and aware. She could feel her body changing, becoming something new and dangerous. Her vision sharpened until she could see individual dust particles floating in the air. Her hearing became so acute that she could distinguish between different types of alien metal alloys by the sounds they made when struck. Enhancement matrix stabilizing, Dr. Vasquez reported, her voice tight with concern. Genetic integration appears to be successful, but I'm reading some unusual neural activity patterns. Sarah opened her eyes and the world looked different. Colors were more vivid, details were sharper, and she could perceive electromagnetic fields as faint auras around electronic equipment. When she sat up on the examination table, the movement was fluid and controlled in ways that felt both familiar and alien. "How do you feel?" Sarah flexed her hands, feeling the increased strength in her muscles and the improved coordination in her movements. "Different, better, ready." She stood up from the table and immediately noticed the change in her physical capabilities. Her balance was perfect, her reflexes were dramatically enhanced, and she could sense the electromagnetic communications of Zephyrian soldiers throughout the ship, with the same clarity as human speech. "The upper research facility is heavily defended," Sarah said, her enhanced senses providing detailed information about enemy positions. 12 soldiers, advanced energy weapons, and what appears to be an automated defense system. But I can sense the locations of our people. They're alive but under active genetic extraction. Dr. Vasquez gathered her equipment and the alien scanner she had been using. "What's the plan?" Sarah picked up the energy weapon she had captured, and for the first time, she could understand its operation intuitively. The alien technology seemed familiar now, as if the enhancement process had given her access to Zephyrian technical knowledge. Direct assault. The Zephyrians have been adapting to human tactics, but they've never faced an enhanced human before. They won't know how to counter something they didn't expect to exist. They moved through the service corridors toward the upper research facility, but Sarah's enhanced capabilities allowed them to move much faster than before. She could sense patrol movements through the ship's hull and anticipate enemy positions before they became threats. At the access point to the upper level, Sarah encountered the defensive position that had blocked their path earlier. 6 Zephyrian soldiers with energy shields and coordinated fire patterns, positioned to control the corridor approach. But Sarah was no longer approaching as a normal human. She moved through the Zephyrian defensive line like a force of nature. Her enhanced speed allowed her to close the distance before the aliens could track her movement. Her increased strength let her tear through their energy shields with her bare hands. Her improved reflexes meant that their energy weapons couldn't target her effectively. The engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. When it was over, 6 Zephyrian soldiers lay unconscious or dead, and Sarah hadn't even used her captured weapon. "Incredible," Dr. Vasquez breathed. "You moved faster than their targeting systems could track." Sarah felt a disturbing satisfaction at the efficiency of her attack. The enhancement process had given her capabilities beyond human norms, but it had also awakened instincts that felt decidedly non-human. She pushed the feeling aside and focused on the mission. The upper research facility was a nightmare of biological experimentation. Human prisoners were connected to genetic extraction equipment that was slowly harvesting their DNA while keeping them alive and conscious. Sarah recognized Viper and Thunder among the victims, along with several other humans she didn't know. "My God," Dr. Vasquez whispered. "They're using them as living genetic factories." Sarah counted the enemy personnel in the facility. 12 soldiers, as her enhanced senses had indicated, plus 4 scientists operating the extraction equipment. The automated defense system was a sophisticated energy turret that tracked movement throughout the chamber. "Stay here," Sarah told Dr. Vasquez. "I'm going to end this." She entered the research facility like an avenging angel, her enhanced abilities allowing her to move through enemy fire with impossible grace. The automated turret tracked her movement, but her speed made targeting impossible. The Zephyrian soldiers tried to coordinate their response, but she was among them before. They could establish effective firing positions. Sarah's combat knife found weak points in alien armor with enhanced precision, while her captured energy weapon eliminated targets with shots that were perfectly placed despite her rapid movement. The enhancement process had given her an intuitive understanding of Zephyrian anatomy and technology that made her devastatingly effective. The engagement was over in minutes. Sarah stood among the fallen Zephyrian personnel, breathing heavily but uninjured. The enhancement process had made her faster, stronger, and more capable than any human had ever been, but it had also left her feeling disconnected from her humanity. She began freeing the human prisoners while Dr. Vasquez worked to shut down the genetic extraction equipment. Viper was unconscious but alive, his vital signs stable despite the ordeal. Thunder was conscious and alert, his eyes showing recognition when he saw Sarah. "Ghost, what happened to you? You look different." Sarah helped him down from the extraction table. "Long story. Can you move? I think so. They've been keeping us alive but weak. Whatever they were doing to us, it was designed to harvest genetic material without killing us. Dr. Vasquez finished shutting down the extraction systems and began helping the other prisoners. We need to get everyone out of here immediately. The Zephyrians will be sending response teams, and we're too exposed in this facility. Sarah's enhanced senses detected massive movement throughout the ship. The aliens were converging on their location with overwhelming numbers. But she also sensed something else, the ship's power. Systems were fluctuating in patterns that suggested they were preparing for some kind of massive energy discharge there, planning to destroy this section of the ship, she realized. Rather than risk us escaping with their research data, they're going to eliminate the entire facility. Viper struggled to his feet, leaning on Thunder for support. How long do we have? Sarah's enhanced perception allowed her to interpret the ship's electromagnetic patterns with startling clarity. Maybe 10 minutes before they overload the power systems in this section. Can we reach the extraction point in time? Sarah looked at the injured humans she was responsible for protecting. In their weakened condition, they couldn't move fast enough to outrun the Zephyrian response teams and reach safety before the ship's self-destruction activated. But Sarah was no longer constrained by normal human limitations. Dr. Vasquez, can you guide them to the extraction point? I think so, but what about you? Sarah checked her captured energy weapon and felt the alien technology responding to her enhanced understanding. I'm going to make sure you have enough time to get clear. Sarah, you can't take on an entire ship by yourself. Sarah smiled, feeling the predatory instincts that the enhancement process had awakened. Doctor, I'm not entirely myself anymore. And the Zephyrians are about to discover what happens when you enhance a human weapon beyond its original specifications. She handed Dr. Vasquez her communication device. Get them to Phoenix. Tell him that Ghost completed her mission. Sarah watched as Dr. Vasquez led the rescued prisoners toward the extraction route, then turned to face the approaching Zephyrian response teams. She was no longer fully human, but she was still a Navy SEAL. And Navy SEALs completed their missions. The corridor filled with alien soldiers, their energy weapons tracking toward her position. Sarah smiled and stepped forward to meet them. She had been enhanced beyond human norms, but she had retained the one thing that made humans truly dangerous, the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect others. The Zephyrians were about to learn why you never challenge a Navy SEAL operative, especially one who had nothing left to lose.